the real legacy of these cases, despite the political attempt to use them to tar and feather your reputation, to try to deplatform you, to try to scare off audiences from supporting you. That's their political objective of the press and some of the politicians that have propagated the case. But the lasting legal legacy of this case will be the protection of the First Amendment and what it means for the free press and free speech. As I told CNN yesterday, the key issue in this case is whether press and speech will remain free in the United States. Because if some of the legal theories being pursued are permitted or allowed, then press will no longer be free and speech will no longer be free in the United States. So these cases will establish the true scope of the First Amendment and will probably be the most seminal, foundational, fundamental First Amendment cases in the country for decades to come.
InfoWars, the most banned network in the world.
Joining us is constitutional lawyer Robert Barnes. And he's also a defense lawyer. He's also a civil rights lawyer. And I wanted to get him on today. I know when listeners hear about Sandy Hook, your eyes glaze over. So do mine. But this latest escapade with Sandy Hook disinformation is illustrative of how the corporate media lies en masse towards a certain aim. So if I can show the viewers a close shot of this, please. Another twist in the Sandy Hook family's defamation case against Alex Jones. That's the Washington Post 2 months ago. Got no coverage. You have to specifically search the headline to even find it. It's buried. That there was a special interest case where the Supreme Court came in of Connecticut, took over the case before it ever even went to trial, years before it was going to trial, which is incredibly rare, saying that there were anomalies to how I was being treated. We'll let Barnes, who's an expert on this, describe how important this is. Notice you don't see how we're winning there and how they're trying to railroad us, but it's so bad that even Supreme Courts are coming in, not after the case, but before. Very rare. But then look at this. Alex Jones seeks $100,000 from Sandy Hook families. The Daily Beast. None of that's true. I waived attorney's fees, but now they keep filing more and more suits on top of it for no reason, so we're not going to be able to do that. Alex Jones seeks $100,000 from Sandy Hook families. Totally not true. They're the ones suing me. Father of Sandy Hook victims wins defamation lawsuit against Alex Jones. The Associated Press, it says, I wrote a book with James Fetzer I've never read. I'm not in the book. I read it after I learned I supposedly wrote it. I never lost a suit. But everybody's running around saying, I've lost. Because they know they're going to end up losing in the end. But they don't care. They want to declare I've lost to scare everyone. See, it's all about perception. And so I've even seen talk show hosts that I know. I was sent a video yesterday just so happy going, I told you he lost his appeal of his trial in Texas. He's going bankrupt. None of that was true. I've not gone to trial on any of this. Clearly, it's been filed in Democrat-controlled areas to railroad me. It's so obvious that the Supreme Court of Connecticut got involved. I mean, this is amazing, but it does make me wonder, what are they going to do next? Here's yesterday, all over the newspapers, and the paper locally today. Jones loses Texas appeal in ongoing lawsuit with Sandy Hook father. Didn't lose an appeal. We'll explain that in a moment. Here's another one. It's all over the New York Times, everywhere. Alex Jones loses. Alex Jones loses. I have to pay all costs, they claim. Well, then I read it all, talked to lawyers yesterday, and that wasn't the case. So Robert Barnes joins us to, again, illustrate how if they can't actually assassinate my character and destroy us in the real world, thanks to your support, your prayers, they'll just announce I'm dead, like saying Mark Twain's dead when he's not. To say, oh, look, he's a loser. We're winning. They're losing. America was never great. It'll never be that great. Barnes, you're the expert on why they're doing this. We're going to counteract this next week. We're not going to announce that yet, but the suits will be filed next week. We're ready to announce that's happening, just not the specifics till you're in studio next week. But you've got the floor of this segment next. Was I accurate in what I laid out there? Because you're the expert.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there were several different components that were misrelayed in the press, and that they knew that they were misrelayed in the press by some partisan members of the press, like Huffington Post and others. And so, for example, what happened in the appeal case was the question was whether or not the appeal should be heard before the trial court hearing or after the trial court hearing due to some unique timeline issues under Texas law. If we did not file the appeal, then we could have waived our arguments for an appeal. So we had to raise it. And what the appeals court said, no, we're going to send it back to the trial court. Let's have the trial court have the hearing first, and then we'll have a hearing on the merits. No merits decision has ever been issued by any appeals court in this matter. So the relaying it as a lost appeal, as if it was a lost appeal in the merits, and saying a bunch of costs were due that were not going to be due, is just appellate costs are very small costs that you pay. So that was entirely misinterpreted and misrelayed by the media and the press. There was some discussion of discovery that was misrelayed and misinterpreted by the press. There's no question that the most significant development to date in all of the Sandy Hook related cases was the Connecticut Supreme Court taking that extraordinary action to get involved and to intervene in the case and to say, we really need to look at this and see and usually that's like a 1 in a 10,000 proposition. So all kinds of people request the Connecticut Supreme Court to get involved in cases prior to a hearing, prior to trial, and it's because it relates to a new First Amendment issue. All of the cases concern the First Amendment, whether the First Amendment has a safe space exception that allows people to sue someone if they feel emotionally upset by the nature of their speech, even if no specifically false statement was made about them as an individual. That's one of the critical issues that's paramount and pervades the Sandy Hook cases constitutionally. But the one the Connecticut Supreme Court took up is whether or not a court can effectively censor or use its power in the judicial system to censor someone's out-of-courtroom speech. Because that's effectively what took place there. And in fact, the U.S. Supreme Court many decades ago said that cannot happen. A famous case out of California involving Harry Bridges in a labor union case, where Bridges said a lot of very controversial things about the court hearing. Basically, Bridges said he wasn't going to obey, the labor union wasn't going to obey the injunction and a bunch of other conduct like that. And the U.S. Supreme Court said that's protected speech under the First Amendment, and no court can issue contempt or any other form of sanction or discipline for someone's politically protected speech. So I think all of these, it's extraordinary that these cases, the real legacy of these cases, despite the political attempt to use them to tar and feather your reputation, to try to deplatform you, to try to scare off audiences from supporting you, that's their political objective of the press and some of the politicians that have propagated the case. But the lasting legal legacy of this case will be the protection of the First Amendment and what it means for the free press and free speech. As I told CNN yesterday, the key issue in this case is whether press and speech will remain free in the United States. Because if some of the legal theories being pursued are permitted or allowed, then press will no longer be free and speech will no longer be free in the United States. So these cases will establish the true scope of the First Amendment and will probably be the most seminal, foundational, fundamental First Amendment cases in the country for decades to come.
And by the way, you're not just saying that. The Washington Post, the New York Times, Rolling Stone, they all say we're ending